Hello, my love. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Gillian. I'm a psychic leadership coach. Whether we know each other or you're new to this community, I am so excited to finally be birthing this podcast out into the world. This is something that I've wanted to do for an incredibly long time, so I'm absolutely pumped to be here sharing this transmission with you. This is going to be your home of feminine leadership. It is my intention that this transmission becomes a space that inspires you, that empowers you, and that maybe sometimes activates and calls forward the part of you who is not embodying your full feminine force. As women, we have been conditioned to lead from a place of deep disconnection. We've been severed from our feminine energy, disconnected from our bodies, our spiritual gifts, and our turn on. And this is absolutely devastating for every woman that I know. This has women constantly never feeling good enough, no matter how much they achieve. It has you hustling to get ahead because you've been taught to lead from a place of misalignment. So in this podcast, I'm going to be sharing how you can reclaim your feminine, can drop back in and be led by the wisdom of your body, how when aligning with your cycles, you access deep states of flow, creativity, and productivity. And it is through unleashing your feminine energy, reconnecting to your body, reawakening your spiritual gifts, and reconnecting to your eroticism and your turn on, that you become the influential woman and leader that I know you're ready to become. After working with women from around the globe, it doesn't matter what life that woman has led or what role she is playing. These are common themes that are impacting every single woman, myself included. It's why I'm so incredibly passionate about sharing the wisdom that I have learned to completely transform my life. Because the success, the influence, the abundance that you desire can be yours. And the kind of leadership that you have within you isn't going to be found in another how-to, another strategy. Whilst that stuff is so fundamental for when you're building a business, when you're really stepping forward as the leader in your industry, that is going to require you to connect into your unapologetic authenticity and to lead from deep embodiment. And this is even more important as we move into the world of AI, because we don't need more women who are filtering their expression, women who feel invisible behind their success, because let's be honest, it can feel like a lot when you're wearing the role of business owner, team leader, mother, wife, friend, and then also trying to carve out some precious time for yourself. And these are all symptoms of when you lead from a place of misalignment. It's going to mean you're going to be burnt out. You might be questioning yourself, your decisions, and you're probably tired of hustling to get ahead. So in this podcast, I am going to translate spiritual wisdom into really practical application that you can use to start to lead from a place of deep alignment. I'm going to turn esoteric wisdom into actionable steps for you and inspire you to reconnect with your eroticism and your pleasure so you can become the influential leader who walks into a room and owns her space and whose presence is felt before she even talks. And trust me, this is all possible when you start to lead from your wild, untamed feminine and you break free of the conditioning and the molds that society has really cast upon you. Today, I'm going to begin this podcast by sharing my origin story, because something that I notice about women when we lead is that because of this good girl conditioning or good wife, good leader, we feel like we have to project an acceptable version of ourselves out into the world, and quite often to be taken seriously as a woman when we lead. And myself, I have a big story, and I will give a warning right now that I am going to speak about domestic violence in this podcast. I'm not going to share the gritty nitty details, but I am a survivor of domestic violence. It's part of my origin story. So if you are someone who has survived this and this might feel activating for you, I encourage you to maybe turn it down when I speak about that part of my life. Or maybe it's a really great opportunity for you to learn how someone else has navigated this. All of this to say that as a woman, we can feel like who we are fundamentally is not good enough, right? Because of our life experience, because maybe we were picked on at school, maybe we had abusive parents, or we felt like we never fitted in. And that means that as we grow up and we lead, we do portray a version of ourselves that is not really us, right? Because we think that the real us is not good enough, that she's shameful. I want to inspire you to own that part of you, because that is what the world needs. We don't need picture perfect women. We want your raw, unapologetic, unfiltered self. We want you to own who you truly are and how you came here to serve, because that is the thing that's going to make you millions. Your authenticity is literally your magic ingredient, because whilst there might be a lot of other coaches, there might be a lot of other team leaders, nobody else on this planet has walked the exact steps that you have taken through your life. And my love, that makes you powerful. It makes you have a special set of wisdom that nobody else has. And so it felt really important today to share with you my origin story. I grew up in the middle of one of Australia's largest cattle stations in the desert. It was such an incredibly amazing childhood. As a child, my spiritual gifts were really open. And that was really hard to navigate as a kid, because I was always connected to the physical plane, the energetic and the spiritual. And when I was young, I couldn't understand why the people around me couldn't see the beings, the energies, and have the deep connection that I had. Now, because of the way I grew up deeply connected to the land. My favorite memories of when I was a child were of me going walking in the bush with my uncle, my mum, my dad, and really understanding the stories of the land in which I grew up in. And I'm honestly so thankful for that. I had the most incredible childhood that has really shaped the woman that I am today. But then we moved into town, and so I grew up being incredibly remote. There were never any children around me. I didn't spend a lot of time playing with other kids. So when we went into school, I really struggled to fit in. I felt like I was a square peg being put in a round hole. And then when my parents separated, and we moved from a small Aboriginal community, and my mum put me in the Catholic school system where I was among big groups of people, this feeling of not fitting in only became stronger. I went from having a childhood where I was free, where I would always go walkabout. My earliest memories are of me being chased across the desert, because I would literally pack my bag, take my dog, and off into the bush I go. Super dangerous. When I went into this Catholic schooling system, not only did I not understand the politics of school, I didn't understand, and I hated the control, and the tie that I had to wear as part of my uniform became this symbol of this restriction that I was feeling. So I really fucking struggled in high school. I couldn't relate to the girls, but then I was really sporty, and so I threw myself into sport. And at that time, I was setting myself up to become a professional swimmer. That's what I was going to do as a career. And then one day, 3 events happened that would fundamentally change the course of my life. The first one was that I was dancing, fell off a stage and broke my arm. And because of that, I had to say goodbye to the swimming career. That was going to be the thing that I was going to do for the rest of my life. Talk about existential crisis. And then unfortunately, one of the girls that I really loved from high school, that I felt like really got me, she passed away, and I didn't get a chance to go and say goodbye to her, even though I told her that I would. So not only was I carrying the grief of the guilt that I felt for never saying goodbye to my friend, for never telling her how much I loved her, how much she meant to me. I was navigating that. I was also navigating the fact that I wasn't going to be able to be the swimmer that I had in plan to be. And so as a 15-year-old, I'm really going through this existential crisis. And then, because things seem to happen in 3 in universal alignment, I met someone who would fundamentally change the course of my life. Now, I had quite a complicated childhood. As I mentioned, I never felt like I fitted in anywhere. And so I never really felt loved. Then I met someone who told me that they loved me, and unfortunately, what I believed was love, because I had no barometer at that time, was actually the first stages of control, manipulation, and isolation. But I had no idea of that at the time, and domestic violence wasn't really something that was spoken about in school. To be honest, I probably wouldn't have listened either. Anyway, so before I knew it, I had moved in with this person, and before I knew that, my entire world had changed. I was partaking and undergoing and suffering the full range of domestic violence. So I was coercively controlled, financially controlled, physically abused, emotionally abused, and isolated from anyone that I know. I think I went through about 8 mobile phones, because every time I would have a phone, he would smash it so that I wouldn't be able to speak to anyone. So here's me, this now 16-year-old person who had moved out of her childhood home because she thought that this person loved her. To be honest, that's all I ever really wanted, was to be loved. And I'm isolated, and before you know it, I'm pregnant. And I, even though I was 16 at the time, had enough foresight to be very aware of the trajectory that my life was starting to map out if I didn't make some big changes. So in that moment, as a 16-year-old child, I made a pledge that I still live by today. And that pledge was to always become greater than my environment. And I always had this feeling that what had happened to me had happened for a very specific purpose, and I knew that I would use it to help empower other women who had gone through similar things. And so all of along, because I was a psychically open child, I had this knowing that there was a greater purpose to everything that was happening to me, and that I would use this as fuel to better myself, to better humanity. And I still feel really strongly about that. And so the next thing became really clear was what is the next right step I need to take to become greater than my environment? And so that was going back to school, because I'd left school. I didn't have any way for me to be able to get to school because he controlled every aspect of my life. And I was quite often left alone on a property that I had no way to leave, no car, no resources. So I convinced this person to move back into town so that I could go back to school. And that was the first step that I took in bettering my life. Now, I ended up actually completing year 11 at night. I actually left school and had our daughter a few hours later. And then I was really fortunate to really commit to parenting her for the next few years. So when she was 2, and I felt like she was in a stage where she could go into care and that she'd done all those big things that children do in that time period, that I could then start to think about, okay, what is the life I want to set up for her and me? And so then I went back and did year 12 with a 2-year-old. I graduated from year 12, and then I took another kind of 2 years to figure things out. And by this time, I obviously had left the abusive relationship. I ended that when our daughter was 3 months old. And so I'm still very aware of what life was looking like for us if I didn't make some pretty big moves. And so I decided that university was a really great pathway for me to better both my daughter's life and my life. And so as a single mum, as someone who, because of the domestic violence, was suffering the most horrendous depression, I had a big range of stress and trauma related illnesses. I suffered every kind of immuno thing that you could imagine. I have no tonsils. They've taken all my wisdom teeth out. I've had so many sinus problems. And these were all symptoms of the stress and trauma that I wasn't able to deal with at that point in my life, right? So I've gone from being this very spiritually awakened child to having the most magnificent childhood to feeling like that wasn't enough, that made me weird. That was why I wasn't fitting in. And so over this time period, I've gone through this process of domestication where I've really started to sever myself off as a spiritual being. I've disconnected from the land and really disconnected from my body because I was deeply traumatized. And so I go to uni, I spend 5 years, and I graduate as an award-winning designer because yes, I am a high achiever. That is why I work with high achieving women, because I understand the drive that is innately within you when you're a high achiever. But all of the time, I'm incredibly sick because it's actually quite amazing that I graduated university. I'm raising a young child, taking her to school, taking her to sports. I'm doing university. I'm having to work because there was minimal support from her father at that time. And so there is literally this woman who is carrying it all and who hasn't dealt with the impact of her trauma because at that point I didn't have capacity. And so when I finished university, I was able to get the dream job. I thought, yes, I've made it. I have finally gotten and proven to everyone, and this is something that I think is really important. When we come from a place of lack or limitation, we can be in this proving energy when we think that we are not good enough. Because I had a child at 16, I felt like I wasn't good enough, that I had really absorbed the things that people would say to me, and I know what people think when someone has a child when they're young. No one's really saying congratulations. People are kind of shocked. And so I had this energy of I'm going to prove to you that I'm not a dropkick. And so there was this fear, this proving energy, and this lack of worth that was behind everything that I used to do then. So I'm incredibly successful on the outside. I'm now traveling internationally. I'm getting paid well. I'm winning awards. I had the kind of job and life that many people would aspire to. But the truth is, I was dying inside. I was incredibly unwell. I was drinking a lot of alcohol to numb the feelings that I just wasn't ready to partake. And then there was an event that fundamentally changed the course of my life. And as I was walking home from work one day, I had this knowing in my body and my intuition say to me, you're going to get hit by a car here. Now I heard this voice 3 times, and every time it rocked my entire body because I was like, okay, something's going to happen. But then came Friday afternoon and I'd completely forgotten about it. I'd had a big week. And so I was preparing for the photo shoot that I was going to on a Saturday. Yes, that's right. I had worked, 50 plus hours during the week, but was also going to be working on the weekend. And that really sums up the life that I was living there. There was a cost for that kind of success. And so I'm walking across the road. I have all my styling items for this photo shoot ready. And all of a sudden I hear this bang. And before I know it, I'm being thrown into the middle of the road because I've been hit by a car. And that moment really stopped me in my tracks. I legitimately thought I was going to die because the last thing I remember was seeing a tram that was coming straight at me. So when I woke up, I was very surprised that I was still there. But that moment was the moment that changed the trajectory of my life. And so often when we are leading from a place of misalignment, the universe will really stop us in our tracks. I see this a lot. So this can often look like a sickness in which it is impossible for you to keep living the way that you had. People can get chronic fatigue, all different kinds of sicknesses that mean that they can no longer operate like that. It can happen like I did in an accident. Some people will be made redundant. Some people might go through a divorce or a significant breakup. But when you are living in misalignment, there will be this fundamental event that happened that literally explodes your life and means that you cannot operate the way that you had operated before. And this moment was honestly probably one of the best things that happened to me, because it forced me to deal with my shit. It forced me to start looking at the impact of the relationship that I was abused in, and how I was still carrying the trauma of that time deeply within my body, and how that was actually really subconsciously coming out in the way that I lived my life, the way that I led, and particularly in my relationships. That moment caused me to start to heal. It started off in traditional talk therapy, and I think that that is a really important part of the process, but it will only ever get you so far, because your life experience is stored within the body. And so if you don't work with your body, you are never really going to release the trauma imprints that every single person carries within. I like to think of talk therapy, while really important, as like the first 10 to 20% of you really completely healing yourself. And so as I went through my healing process, I started to completely transform my life and release these things that I thought were just fundamentally part of who I was. And before I knew it, I was in Indonesia doing my first yoga teacher training. And I came back from that training looking like a completely different person, because for the first time in my life, I actually connected to who I was on a soul level. It was that yoga training that reconnected me back to myself as a spiritual being. And then once again, that was another moment in which my life would never be the same again. I came back to Melbourne, Australia, where I lived, and it was very clear that I was no longer going to be an interior architect. So I started this process of inquiry, all of the while knowing that what had happened to me through the hands of someone else, as being a survivor of domestic violence, I knew that that had happened for a reason. And the more I healed and transformed my own body, the more I connected to my feminine, the more I realized the amount of conditioning that actually had me disconnected from my genius, the more I had to share that with other women. So in 2020, I started working with a coach who is one of my favorite women in the world. And through our partnership, we've been able to really discover what my purpose is. And also, it has been an opportunity for me to get really real about the parts of myself that I was hiding from, that I was scared to turn a light on because I thought that they made me less than. And through actually allowing them to be there, I've realized that that's actually what makes me amazing. I'm not shameful because someone abused me, because someone told me I was a piece of shit and I'm never going to go anywhere. That's actually the thing that makes me amazing, because I've been able to heal from that, thrive, and I can connect with other women through that. The ability to hold myself in the full spectrum of my emotions, my pain, my grief is what makes me a phenomenal coach, because I've been able to hold my clients no matter what they've been through in the fullness of their experience. I will walk through their shame with them. I will hold them in their anger and I'll be fucking angry with them. And then I'll celebrate them. And I get to work with the most amazing people. And it's when you start to own your story in your fullness that you realize that the things that you think that you are bad because of, the things that you think are shameful, can actually be really powerful ways for you to meaningfully connect with people, and they can be the things that really make you unique. They become your magic source. And so I made another pledge that until the day I die, I will, in whatever form it looks like, show up and share these practices to help other women thrive, to help other women connect to the part of them that feels alive, and to help other women to create the purposes that they were born to create. And I wanted to start with sharing my origin story, because your origin story, the why, the how you got to where you are right now, that is your superpower. That is the thing that makes you unique, because there is not another human on this planet that has had the exact same experience you have had. There might be other coaches. There might be other spiritual guides. For me, there's other women that are connecting women to their feminine, but nobody is doing it like I am. Because nobody has the life experience that I have. Nobody has the past lives that I've incarnated in. Nobody has the spiritual connections that I have, because they have their own connection. And that is the thing that is going to make you millions. And so if you take anything away from today's podcast, I want you to really start to anchor into how powerful your origin story is. How can you use the things that have happened to you as the vehicles and the modalities that you use to facilitate the change that you were born to have? Because that, my love, is the thing that makes you powerful, that makes you unique. I have the great privilege of working with the most incredible women. And so many of them have had deep life experiences. And that is the thing that I love about them, because their ability to rise above that, their ability to overcome adversity and to still show up for the life, that is the thing that makes you powerful. And it's going to make me really emotional thinking about it. So I want you to know that you have a purpose in life. There is a reason that you incarnated here. And I hope that this podcast is a vehicle for you to start fulfilling that, for you to start allowing yourself to reconnect to your feminine, to allow her and her courageous heart to be the thing that leads you forward. And so today I want to leave you with an invitation. I want you to spend some time thinking about where in your life, in your business, in your leadership, are you not owning your origin story? Where in your life are you creating a filtered version of yourself because you think that that's more acceptable than your truth, because you think it's more palatable? And I want you then to think about, how might that actually be costing you? Because let me tell you, nobody wants a filtered version of you. We're going to have enough of that with AI. People want to feel you. They want to feel your raw, authentic truth. And that is going to come by unapologetically, fiercely embodying who you are and what got you to where you are. That means that the things that you think make you undesirable or unworthy, or they aren't things to be shy away from. They are things that make you deeply human, because we all have those stories. Okay? And I want you to own that and to go into a place of love than that, because I get what it's like to think that you are unworthy. I survived a few years of really traumatic domestic violence where I was consistently beaten, where I was consistently told that you're not good enough, you're not going to ever be anyone, no one is ever going to want you. And so I carried that for so fucking long. I allowed that to plant seeds of limitation within myself, and those seeds grew deep roots that I literally had to pull out of myself. And I still have to show up for that. But I also know that it is in my ownership of that that makes me a really good fucking leader. It's what makes me a phenomenal coach, because I can hold a woman in her fullness. I'm not afraid of your anger, of your shame, of your pain, of your grief, and I will celebrate the fuck out of you as you rise. I will celebrate your power, your confidence, your achievements, because I'm here for it all. And when you get to own your authenticity, when you get to own your honor, your origin story, that's the kind of embodiment that you can too create. And that's what the world needs. We need more authentic, empowered women that are saying, fuck you to the conditioning of how you think I should be. I am going to own my full, wild, untamed, unapologetic fucking expression, and I'm going to lead from that place. And it is that way that I am going to change the world. And I hope that you choose courage and that you do this. So please let me know how you go with your reflections. I'm going to drop the email. If you want to email me below in the show notes, please feel free to do so. And I really hope that today has inspired you and invited you to start to open yourself to leading from your feminine. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, owning your authenticity, owning the parts of you that think that you're not worthy, that's a fucking power move. And I know that you're a powerhouse. I'll see you next week.